And up next is going to be Steve Kent, who's going to cover the personal financial side of transitioning. So, Steve, you're on.
Great. Thank you, Len. Appreciate it. Great information. Thanks for sharing. So, we're going to talk for a few minutes about what you need to consider when planning for your financial future. It's something that people hear about, but don't necessarily do something about or know your options. So, let's talk briefly about what is financial freedom. So the first thing I really want to talk about is while you're working with Len, getting your business ready to sell in that 2 to 7 year time frame, is how do you protect you and your business financially today? The thing to ask yourself first is if you have more than one partner, is that business protected if something happens to that second or third partner? It's something called a buy-sell agreement, which you may or may not have heard of. But what it really comes down to is if you have partner A and partner B, and partner B passes away, somebody else is going to have that portion of the business. You, as partner A, want that entire business, but how do you buy partner B's piece from the spouse or whoever else has it? That's the buy-sell agreement. Very important to do that so you can maintain control and run it your way. Another thing is your business legally and financially separate from your personal assets? When I had my business in 2013, I used a subchapter S because if something happened, if somebody took legal action against me, it stays in the business level and I'm protected. So it's something you really need to think about. Excuse me. Another thing to think about is, do you have a trust in place? The trust is great because it is protected from the court system. So if you have a will, you go through probate, it's the courts, it's attorneys, and you can lose a lot of money just to that and time. But if you have a trust, it's all documented, it's separate, and nothing happens, and you can transact any business after that much more quickly and less expensively. What a lot of people hear about, myself included, are what are your goals? In this case of this presentation, what are your goals for now and post business? And the key is to start looking at these goals now so that you can plan for them when that time comes. For example, how are you saving for retirement? If everything you have is in the business and you're drawing money now, how do you live on what income when the business is no longer there? It would make sense, I would think, to eliminate your debt as much as you can now. So again, you need less money to live on later and enjoy your life. Are you going to change your environment? Are you going to live in the same house, in the same state? Do you want another house? Are your parents going to move in with you? Will you have the need to earn more money? How do you plan for that? Because there's always those unexpected things that come along. Well, you have to take care of a loved one. You could have a spouse, a child that may get sick, maybe a chronic something, Alzheimer's, dementia, that you need to take care of someone. You want to control your time, which Coach Pete is going to talk about soon, about how do you control your time and what do you do with it now that you have all this extra time? Do you want to travel the world? I would love to do that. And that is on my bucket list. Or are you going to have to fund someone else's education? Well, maybe your own, maybe a spouse, a child, a grandchild. Whose education would you have to fund? All right. So now another thing to consider that people may not think about are the four enemies of money. Those include taxes, inflation, losses in the market, and indecision. Some of these you can do something about, some of them you can't. So let's address these very quickly. So let's talk, how can we overcome these enemies? So the first of those are taxes. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is taxes have to be paid. We cannot get away from it. But the good news is you have the option to say when and how much taxes you want to pay. For example, the leftmost chart says, I'm going to pay tax all the time on everything I earn. Not the greatest scenario, but that is a scenario. The middle graph says, I'm going to not pay tax now when I'm making a small amount of money or my investments are low, but I am going to pay more taxes later when my investments are high. Again, not the ideal situation because you're going to pay more taxes later. The rightmost graph says I'm going to pay a little bit of tax now and no tax later. That again, 3 examples. The choice is yours, but where do you want to pay the taxes? And this can be done for you. So another thing to think about are market losses. Now, we're all programmed through the media that we can only have one of the following things. We can either grow our money, get a reasonable rate of return, have income for life, or protect our principal. And that's what we're told. And if you can only have one of those 4, which one would that be? But the good news is, what if you could have all 4? What if you could grow your money, get a reasonable rate of return, have income for life, and protect the principal from the downsides in the market? Again, this is something most people don't think about, don't know, but it can be done. The last piece, which is the indecision piece, and I suffered from this for years. I like to equate this as information is coming at us so quickly that we can either look at it as a garden hose or a fire hose. And when that fire hose opens up, there is so much information, we get paralyzed by the amount and we get confused and we do nothing. So the way to get around this is to break it down into small pieces. First, identify your time frames. When do you want to retire? When do you want to sell the business? And again, talk to Len. When do you want to pay those taxes? What's your appetite to pay them? What's your risk tolerance for losses in the market? If your investments are going up and down and you have that risk tolerance, that's great. But think about what happens if the money in your investment goes down right before you retire. That means you either retire on less money or you keep working. And frankly, neither one is a great option. Also, identify your ideal income once the business is sold. So having said all that, last point here is to work with an independent licensed professional to assist you with all the things we just talked about.